Greetings, citizens of York. My name is Alistair Lord and I'm an independent candidate for the upcoming election on July the 4th for York Central, and I would like you to vote for me. Today I want to talk about my second policy, which is economic justice. Now, there's much talk from politicians about the quote-unquote cost of living crisis. Let's be quite clear. It is not a cost of living crisis. It is the cost of the rapacious greed of the super wealthy crisis. So I'm talking about people like Bill Gates, the father-in-law of Rishi Sunak, Jeff Bezos, Donald Trump, multimillionaires and billionaires. They don't think like you and I. Now, I would argue that the only way you can understand these people is through the lenses of madness and addiction. These people are addicted to money and power. You cannot reason with them. Now, I offer as evidence, first of all, the 2007 and 2008 crisis, where there was a massive transfer of wealth from the poor and the middle class to the super wealthy. And again, during COVID, there was I think the figure is around 3.5 trillion US dollars. Now, if you don't know what 3.5 trillion is, it's $3,500 billion was transferred from the poor and the middle class to the super wealthy. I would argue, and I think it's quite clear, although most economists will not talk about this because they're pseudoscientists, but our economic system is built like this. It is built to transfer money from the poor and the middle class to the super wealthy. And we're seeing this in real time right now. Now, in the long term, we need major change. And I talk about the major changes that are required in my book, Post-Capitalism, an Alternative to the Great Reset. And I don't want to talk about the long-term issues here. What I want to talk is about my proposals for short-term issues. So here's my proposal number one. We abolish VAT. At the moment, VAT is 20% in the UK. That's 20% on everything that you buy. So for example, if you go into a shop and you buy a Mars bar for £1.20, you're paying £1 for the Mars bar, you're paying 20 pence in tax. If you go and you buy a laptop for £600, you're paying £500 for the laptop and you're paying £100 in VAT. And it's well known that VAT falls more heavily on the poorest in society. So by abolishing VAT, that would put more money in the pocket of probably at least 90% of the poorest people in the UK, but probably more than 90%. Well, what would we do with the money that the government loses from VAT? Well, I mean, in the first instance, a lot of that money that was going to the government is lost in corruption. We know that a lot of money is lost due to corruption, so we know that the Conservative Party were handing out contracts to their donors for PPE that couldn't be used. Michelle Mone is well known for this. So let's cut down on corruption for a start. Let's stop giving money to the Ukraine war machine for a start. But here's two policies that could replace the money that we'd lose from VAT. So the first one is a non-value added tax. And non-value added tax is talked about in this book, Taxtopia, and it's written by the rebel accountant, who is an accountant who has more than 2 decades of experience. So a non-value added tax would work something like this. For example, Thames Water are pumping raw sewage into rivers instead of paying to treat it. So they would be taxed on that. As well as paying fines for environmental pollution, they would pay higher levels of tax because they are taking value from society. So anything that takes value from society would be taxed. My second proposal, and I feel that this is a short-term option, is that we have a windfall tax on the super wealthy. Now, this is something that the economist Gary Stevenson talks about in his videos on YouTube. I heartily recommend him, Gary's Economics. Go and take a look at what he says on windfall tax on the super wealthy. But basically, let's say the top 0.1% of the wealthiest in the UK get taxed, because let's face it, they have the money and they can afford it. Thank you for giving me your time today, and remember, on July the 4th in York Central, vote Lord.